It's a former Republican governor and senator from Virginia, George Allen. He's achieved more in his political career than most politicians could dream of, but he feels like he's got more work to do for the people of his state. He recently announced his intentions to run for the Senate again to replace the retiring Jim Webb, who defeated him in 2006. Joining us now, Governor George Allen. And Governor, boy, if there hasn't been a political earthquake since 2006, I don't know what other description you could give to it. Tea Party, the whole let's, instead of spending and bring home the bacon, let's cut spending and not bring home the bacon. You ready for this new world?
Yeah, I am. And I think the American people are as well, because what I've seen since I've been out of government and losing is something you learn from. It's humbling. And you also recognize how out of touch Washington is with the American people, and their voices are being ignored. And you saw it for several years. And now, of course, we're in even more perilous times insofar as the debt, which is very dangerous. And in fact, I see a lot of Americans who say, gosh, we need to get back in control of our own destiny. With this dangerous debt, we're vulnerable to others. With our counterproductive, cockeyed energy policy, we're vulnerable to others. And one of the things I'm asking the people of Virginia to do is hire me on for 6 years, and I want to fight for their voices, for their aspirations, their hopes for themselves and for their children, to get our economy moving again, utilize our energy resources. And we need to rein in this out of control, overspending, overreaching federal government.
Yeah, that's fine, except for there's a lot of people that look at Republicans today and say Republicans are on probation. And right now, we don't have the report card yet. They're still on probation until they perform. So the old guard is being measured versus the new guard, the Tea Party crowd, the Rand Pauls, and that sort of stuff. How are you going to fit in with the fact that you are from the old school? You are old guard. You've been in politics most of your life. How are you going to translate that to the people and say, hey, I'm a new believer here?
Well, I've always been a believer, and many of the concerns that people have now, I had when I was in the Senate. I thought we were spending too much then. I was one of about a dozen who voted against the bridge to nowhere in Alaska. And that's one of the reasons I say this is why the president ought to have line item veto authority, which I've been advocating for many years, as well as a balanced budget requirement. Some of the issues, and I like speaking and been invited to speak to many Tea Party groups. I like people who actually care about our country and feel that our country need not continue to decline, but we need to get ascending once again. And I think most people recognize that these 2012 elections are going to set the trajectory of our country, and whether our children will have diminished opportunities to live their lives, or we can get this country more competitive for investment and more job opportunities for people all across our country. And so I'm glad that I actually do have the experience to been a fighter against the establishment when I was governor, when I was in the Senate. And now I think there's even more support amongst the owners of the government, we the people, for these reforms that some of these I was advocating for 15, 16 years ago.
Well, how do you align yourself, though? I mean, because it does seem kind of clubbish within the club. If you get elected to the Senate, then the question is, who do you align with? And do you have Tea Party support?
Well, yes, I do have Tea Party support. I think Tea Party support has to be earned, just like any other voters' support. You know who I'm going to be aligned with when I get in the U.S. Senate, if the people of Virginia accord me that responsibility? I'm going to be aligned with the families of Virginia, the small business owners. Rather than worrying about process or partisanship, I want to be advocate. In fact, we're going to run our campaign based on ideas and achievable reforms, whether it's a balanced budget requirement, line item veto authority. Heck, when I was in the Senate, I said, look, if you don't get these appropriations bills done on time, you ought to withhold a member's pay. I'm going to keep fighting for it. They're still going on a continuing resolution from last year. We need to get back to basics.
All right.
The other things that need to be done is utilize our abundant and plentiful coal, natural gas, and oil resources rather than getting jerked around by cartels and hostile dictators.
One of the things that we talked about just before you came on the program is the idea that Washington speaks about cutting and reducing deficits and all of this other, that is not true. The president's budget is not a reduction. It's just growing and growing and growing the debt. I think a lot of us are suspicious about whether or not people in Washington have the kahunas to get out there and truly make real cuts, not off of some projected number.
You're exactly right. There's an urgency to this. And the president's proposal is more taxes, more spending, and more debt. And the fact that we owe more in our bonds, government bonds, to China than to American people is a vulnerable position to be in. And we just can't continue. The federal government cannot continue to be overreaching, telling us what kind of energy to use, what kind of health care to get. In fact, this is the anniversary of this $800 billion stimulus program, which was supposed to reduce unemployment. We have higher unemployment. The economy's not any better. And indeed, all we have is our children with greater debt that they're going to have to pay off in the future. So we can't dawdle anymore as a country. And I think the people of America understand that. If only the folks in Washington would listen to the common sense wisdom of people and actually return to the principles that Ronald Reagan talked about or Thomas Jefferson, where you have a government that is focused on its enumerated responsibilities of national security and everything else. Stop pestering people and don't take from the mouths of labor the bread they have earned.
I'll go with that. We wish you well. Governor George Allen, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure, Tom.